Hi, welcome to RAR Math. Today I'm doing a series of videos on functions. Today the directions say determine whether the equation represents y as a function of x, or f of x, since function notation y and f of x are the same thing, and state the domain. Notice it doesn't say if it's a function, state the domain. It just says state the domain for all of them, which means I'm going to have to know a little bit about each of my functions to be able to state the domain. So for this first one, we have a parabola. The parabola looks like this, which means the domain talks about what values of x I can put into my equation. This is a function. I could test the function by the vertical line test, which basically says if I draw a vertical line anywhere in my graph, if it hits more than once, it's not a function. This is a function. As for the domain, do I have any restrictions on values of x? The answer is no. So for my domain, I could write this as an inequality. Negative infinity is less than x is less than positive infinity. I could write it in interval notation, negative infinity to positive infinity. The domain is all real. I could say the domain is all real. Values of x. There's lots of variations on the way we can write the domain on this one. Basically saying, yeah, whatever you want, it's all good. Okay, for this next one, if we look at the graph of the square root of x, it starts at the origin and it looks like this parabola fell over. And the bottom half that got buried, we can't see anymore. So is this a function if we looked at that vertical line test? Sure, it is a function. Now, as for the domain, the thing about square roots is we can't have a square root of a negative number. So x, or whatever is under the square root, has to be greater than or equal to 0. So I could write my domain like that. If I want interval notation, I would say 0 to infinity. Now, the bracket means it can equal 0. The parenthesis means it's reaching but not equaling. If I wanted the sentence form, I would say all real values of x greater than or equal to 0. Which I have no idea why I would choose that form when these two are so succinct. So I may not go with this one very much. Okay. The graph of 1 over x, this is a rational, looks like this. If you have a graphing calculator, you can check it out, or you can go to Desmos.com. Desmos.com. It's a great free graphing utility online, and you can look at all of these graphs and see what it looks like. So if we look at this, it is a function. It passes that vertical line test. So yes. And pretty much if you can isolate y and have y equals, y equals, y equals. If you can have y equals, it is a function. That's your other clue. So the vertical line test is one test. If you can isolate y, so it's y equals, that's another test. As for the domain, you can never have 0 in the denominator of a fraction. And since you cannot have 0 in the denominator of the fraction, our domain is x cannot equal 0. So that's an easy way to write it. I can also write negative infinity to 0 joined with, that's union 0 to positive infinity. So everything but 0. I'm going to avoid the sentence because those are getting really long. Okay, so for my next graph, the graph of f of x equaling 10 is a horizontal line at 10. And I switched colors because otherwise it would just look like, it would be hard to read. This is y equaling 10. Is this a function? Yes. This is absolutely a function. It passes that vertical line test with flying colors. And the domain, just like our, sorry for that. Just like our first graph, our domain is going to be all real values of x. Because there is no x, there's no restrictions, it goes forever left and right. So it ends up being negative infinity to positive infinity, all real. For the next graph, x equals negative 7, this is a vertical line at x equaling negative 7. This is a vertical line. It does not pass the vertical line test, for every point is along that vertical line, so this is not a function. The domain is x equaling negative 7. That's it. It is just negative 7. The interval notation to write this would just be really odd. It would just be pretty much negative 7 to negative 7. Like, I don't even think people would write that. It's just weird. It's just x is negative 7. That's not a function. It's just a vertical line. This, if you are curious what this is a graph of, it is a graph of a circle with a radius of 5. 5, 5, 5, 5. So does it pass the vertical line test? No. So this is not a function. It still has a domain. It exists. If you think about it, it exists from exactly here to exactly here. It is a very tight domain. So the domain, and it exists at this point, and it exists at this point. So it exists from negative 5 is less than or equal, negative 5 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to positive 5. So in interval notation, it is bracket, negative 5, 5, bracket. So it does have a domain, even though it is not a function. It is a very not too difficult domain to write. All right, so there we have it. We have our functions or not functions and our domains. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you.